2017 was such an incredible year for games that I didn't see 2018 living up to it, yet here we are. While I still think 2017 and not 2018 will be the year that we look back on and remember more fondly, 2018 had its own collection of incredible games across all platforms. Narrowing my favorites down to just 10 was just as difficult as it's ever been, and there's still so many incredible games that I didn't get a chance to play. That being said, these are my top 10 games of 2018. Octopath Traveler is a pretty by-the-numbers RPG. Its story is forgettable, and the 8 playable characters it introduces to you don't interact in any memorable ways. It also sports some insane difficulty spikes, meaning you'll have to spend hours upon hours grinding. It's also incredibly gorgeous, and has the best soundtrack in any game this year. The striking art style, combined with the memorable orchestral tunes, make Octopath Traveler's world worth losing yourself in despite its shortcomings elsewhere. The turn-based combat, while familiar to those who have played RPGs for years, adds enough in the way of character abilities and interesting mechanics to feel fresh and engaging. I'm eager to see how its inevitable sequel will improve on the issues that plagued the original, because Octopath Traveler has enough charm and character to make it stand out amongst the sea of JRPGs out there. When I played Tetris Effect for about 30 minutes, the first thing I did was text my mom. "I have a game I need to show you," I said. There are few games out there that my mom and I can bond over, but Tetris has always been one. Tetris Effect was such a mind-blowing and unique experience that it made something as recognizable as Tetris feel completely brand new, and it allowed my mother and I to bond over video games for the first time in a long time. Of course, I say all this having played Tetris Effect in VR. While the game's visuals and soundtrack are a delight even if you don't own a PSVR headset, this game truly shines when you don the goggles and throw on a pair of high-quality headphones. I've played hours upon hours without even realizing, completely losing myself to the incredibly gorgeous dioramas that make up the game's levels, and I've replayed even the most difficult levels because the music is just that good. Tetris Effect proves that you can reimagine a classic game without changing the core of what makes it great, and I fully intend to lose myself to it for many more months. I was one of the skeptics when Nintendo and the Pokemon Company announced Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee earlier this year. I had fallen out of Pokemon Go due to its litany of technical issues and lack of content, and a game that appeared to mimic it at its core didn't speak to me. But this is Pokemon after all, and Pokemon is magic. Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee has brought me pure joy over the 50+ hours I've played of it. The mechanics of catching and chaining Pokemon is even more addictive than it's ever been, and it's another great example of reimagining a classic game without losing what makes it special in the first place. More importantly, Pokemon Let's Go made me care about Pokemon Go again, and appreciate all the strides that game has made in the years since its release. It still won't replace a traditional Pokemon experience in my heart, but I'm interested to see how Game Freak and the Pokemon Company build on this interesting new take on Pokemon. Prior to this year, I had lost interest in Call of Duty. The last Call of Duty game I had truly played was 2014's Advanced Warfare, which feels like an eternity ago. On top of that, I never particularly enjoyed the Black Ops sub-series of the franchise, so Black Ops 4 felt like another entry I fully expected to skip. Blackout changed all of that. Because of games like Fortnite and PUBG, I've come to really appreciate Battle Royale, the latest trend to hit multiplayer-focused games. Including a Battle Royale mode with the mechanics and familiarity of a Call of Duty game sucked me in and never let go. While Fortnite is the undisputed king of Battle Royale for the time being, Blackout is by far the most polished offering on the market. Mixing the now traditional Battle Royale formula with familiar Call of Duty mainstays like zombies helped make Blackout feel both familiar and unique, while being just as fun and intense as its competitors. Getting into Blackout also reminded me of why I loved Call of Duty multiplayer in the first place, and jumping back into that has been incredibly fun, and has shown me all of the little tweaks that have improved the game over the years. I'm not sure if I'll be buying next year's Call of Duty or the one after that, but Black Ops 4 was a refreshing entry in what had become a stale franchise to me. Firewall 0 Hour isn't the best or most feature-complete online multiplayer game out there, but to me, it's an absolute must-play if you own a PlayStation VR. The one thing that's been holding back VR since its release to the masses has been the lack of killer apps or even games that resemble big AAA releases. To say that Firewall 0 Hour is Rainbow Six in VR may sound pretty derivative, but to experience a game that nails the feeling of tactical combat and makes you and your team feel like Navy SEALs by coordinating attacks is something that has stuck with me from the moment I first fired up the game. We talk about immersion being a major selling point of VR, and all of Firewall's guns, maps, and playable characters are incredibly detailed, making each round look and feel as realistic as possible. I'm hesitant to call Firewall 0 Hour the turning point for AAA quality VR releases. Only time will tell if the market ends up thriving, but this certainly proves that you can make a game that looks like a big budget AAA game in VR that looks and feels unlike anything else and is still incredibly fun. I've always been a fan of David Cage and Quantic Dream, all the way back to Indigo Prophecy, but their latest game, Detroit Become Human, felt like anything but a sure thing before its release. Not only did Detroit Become Human prove me wrong with its incredible production values and moving story, it also now stands alone as my favorite game ever from the French studio. Detroit Become Human does a wonderful job weaving its 3 playable characters' stories together in interesting ways, while still allowing for unparalleled freedom of choice in a story-driven game. The visuals and score are off the charts good, the set pieces are still wonderfully tense, and while it sometimes misses the mark with its social commentary, the story is absolutely wonderful. Quantic Dream have also fixed one of the major issues with its games and choice-based story-driven games in general. By showing you an overview of all the possible outcomes of a scene after you complete it, and watching it expand exponentially as the story progresses, Detroit Become Human begs you to replay its intense and gritty scenes over and over again to unlock every possible outcome. Between the story and the presentation alone, I wanted to play through the game multiple times anyway. My issues with Red Dead Redemption 2 are well documented. It's a chore to play for the most part, and it's too complex for its own good. That being said, it's still one of the biggest, most ambitious, and most memorable games I've played in years. A big part of that is the cast of characters and how they interact with each other. While you know that you're playing as bad people, Rockstar do a wonderful job of making you relate to and appreciate every one of the members of the Dutch van der Linde gang, including Dutch himself. All of this is made possible by the wonderful writing and performances. Red Dead Redemption 2's world is also one that I loved interacting with. Despite the cumbersome controls, I loved coming across strangers, helping or hurting them, and instigating fights in towns. This is obviously a world that Rockstar has put incredible amounts of thought and love into, and it pays off by being one that, despite its issues, I wanted to return to time and time again.
The day is done, time has come. You battled hard, the war is won. You did your worst, you tried your best. Now it's time to rest. Now it's time to rest.
Celeste may seem like just another 2D platformer with pixel art, but it's so much more than that. It's an incredibly moving story that anyone, whether you suffer from mental illness or not, can relate to. It's about overcoming your own doubts and reservations to accomplish a goal, be it a creative endeavor, conquering a fear, or moving on from heartbreak. Like overcoming your own personal fears and obstacles along the way, Celeste is difficult, but instead of beating you into submission, it encourages you to get back up again and retry every time you fail. Celeste is forgiving with how it doles out checkpoints, and its accessibility options are incredibly detailed, letting you customize every facet of the game's difficulty. The best part about all this is that Celeste doesn't make you feel like you're taking the easy way out by opting into these options. Like a supportive friend during a troubling time, Celeste just wants you to succeed and overcome your own doubts on your way to beating the game. From its narrative to its core design, it reinforces a singular and powerful message. Don't give up. Keep trying. If you're anything like me, you'll take that message and carry it with you into the real world. If I had to wager a guess, I would say we've had more bad superhero games throughout the course of my life than good ones. Luckily, that trend appears to be reversing, and we have games like Marvel's Spider-Man to thank for it. Marvel's Spider-Man succeeds based on the fact that its creators, Insomniac Games, care so deeply for the characters and the world that has made Spider-Man the most popular character in the Marvel Universe. Yeah, the swinging is incredible, and the combat is fluid, making you feel like Spider-Man like never before. But it's the story, the characters, and the way they all interact with one another that makes Marvel's Spider-Man the best Spider-Man story I've ever experienced. All of the narrative threads feel fresh, yet they're still based on popular stories told in the comics. Insomniac have mixed and mashed the best stories of the Spider-Verse together in such interesting and new ways while staying true to Stan Lee and Steve Ditko's original vision for the character. As a die-hard Spider-Man fan, I couldn't be more excited for what Insomniac Games has in store for us with the sequel. Until then, however, I'm perfectly content swinging around New York in all of the amazing suits included in the game and fighting crime in fun and interesting ways. If it's one thing that defined what made each and every one of the games on this list special, it's moment-to-moment gameplay. These games rarely waste your time, and they build on the mechanics they introduced in creative ways. No game did this better in 2018 than God of War. In God of War, there's truly never a wasted moment. Every battle, puzzle, and story beat is more enthralling than the last and respects your time and energy. Side quests relate directly to what's going on in the main story, and every line of dialogue feels necessary and pertinent to Kratos and Atreus' journey. Like the story it tells, the presentation is intimate and puts you front and center to the action at all times, while still capturing the grandeur that made previous God of War games so memorable. At its core, God of War just feels good to play. Throwing the Leviathan axe around and decimating dozens of enemies with your godly powers never gets old, and the game constantly adds new enemy variants with different strengths and weaknesses, meaning you always have to adapt and change your approach. Boss fights, while in short supply, are thrilling, visceral, and brutal, reminding you of the original game's own brutality. And what can I say about the cast of characters? For a series that traditionally has been devoid of memorable characters, every character in this game is well-rounded, interesting, and entertaining in their own way. Kratos has gone from an emotionless meathead to a troubled father figure with depth and internal conflict, and Atreus is introduced as a kid who thinks he's invincible, yet ultimately understands the responsibility that comes with his lineage. All of this is wrapped up in a world that is darker and infinitely more interesting than its predecessors. I can't wait to see what the next installments have in store for Kratos and Atreus, and that's not something I thought I'd be saying before God of War released. So which games in 2018 were your favorites? Did we miss something? Think something else was the best game of the year? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and subscribe to us on YouTube. Thanks for watching, and thanks for your continued support.